Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Gaia.
And we're actually starting again. As I mentioned, the first 15 minutes will be in Spanish. Los primeros 15 minutos van a ser en español. Perdón por la tardanza. Pensábamos que ya estábamos en vivo y hablamos como 20 minutos, le hablamos al aire y nada más a las cámaras porque no estábamos en vivo. Entonces, a ver, empecemos una vez más en español conmigo. Perdón, somos medio nuevos en hacer en vivos, entonces a ver si ahora sí ya, sí, miren, ya está, hay gente viéndome y todo, porque yo volteaba a ver a la pantalla y decía, ¿por qué dice que no hay nadie? Y no nos habíamos dado cuenta de que no estábamos en vivo, ya había hecho todos los 15 minutos en español y ya estábamos con las historias en inglés, pero pues empecemos de nuevo, perdón. Sí empezamos a las 8:15, nada más que para nuestro perro, nada más. A ver, déjenme llego otra vez a todos los artículos de los que ya había hablado. Ok, entonces yo hablo siempre mucho y trato de hacer énfasis en cómo agencias no gubernamentales, ONGs y hasta gobiernos mismos de otros países, según ellos más desarrollados, se están tratando de meter más y más cada día, cada año a países donde creen que tienen todavía chance de meter muchas de las ideologías progres e izquierdistas, pues en su mayoría, para cambiar la forma en la que las personas en países como el nuestro, como México, piensan. Y hemos visto cómo se han efectuado algunos de esos cambios a través de agencias no gubernamentales. Por ejemplo, en varios de los videos que hice sobre la diversidad, equidad e inclusión, hablé mucho sobre el HRC o Human Rights Campaign o Campaña por los Derechos Humanos, que normalmente suena pues muy bien, quien no quiere hacer campaña por los derechos humanos, pero esa organización que es de Estados Unidos y empezó ya en serio como en los años 80, se dedica nada más a abogar por los derechos de la comunidad alfabeto, aunque dicen que es la campaña por los derechos humanos. Y cuando se quedaron sin nada que hacer, después de que se legisló el matrimonio gay en Estados Unidos, pues se empezaron a voltear hacia qué otra sección de nuestra comunidad necesita apoyo. Y pues empezaron con todo lo de lo trans. Y ya que también hicieron muchos avances en todo lo de lo trans y en generar inclusión, pues yo diría que bastante forzada, y aceptación, yo diría que también por encimita, empezaron a mirar hacia pues otros países y ahora en especial que la forma en la que piensan las personas, el que se estén dando cuenta de que quieren realmente ganar con todas las políticas muy progres, muy izquierdistas y que hay un trasfondo detrás y que no todo es arcoíris y que sí, hay que apoyar a todos, que realmente muchas veces no se lo creen, en especial muchos de los activistas que dicen querer hacer lo mejor por la humanidad y luego van y empiezan a pegarle a gente, por ejemplo, ser violentos o querer meterse a las instituciones hasta la cocina, pues ya que están viendo que no están siendo tan aceptados por allá y que pues ya lo que podían hacer pues no se logró y las ideas y los planes que tenían pues los hicieron a medias, se están volteando hacia países como México, donde ya la campaña por los derechos humanos ya entró pues otra vez hasta la cocina. Y ahora con Donald Trump y con Elon Musk y llevan menos de un mes, pero con su DOGE o Department of Government Efficiency o el Departamento de Eficiencia gubernamental, bueno, donde checan qué hace el gobierno, para dónde va el dinero y pues qué están haciendo con todos los dólares de los que pagan impuestos de los ciudadanos, pues han estado saliendo varias cosas sobre agencias no gubernamentales y agencias también gubernamentales que se supone que tenían un mandato y que eran para ciertas cosas en específico y llevan años, décadas gastándose dinero y haciendo cosas con el dinero que se les da a través de, pues el dinero nunca es gratis y cuando te dan apoyos gratis nunca son gratis, vienen de impuestos que paga la gente y que muchas veces cuando tú usas esos apoyos también terminas pues lo barato sale caro, lo gratis sale caro. En este caso, pues es uno de los ejemplos. Y bueno, ya voy a entrar al punto porque ya lo di, esta es la segunda vez que voy diciendo esto, ya debería tenerlo más practicado. Normalmente practico mucho para los videos que grabamos, pero en vivos pues me explayo un poco más. ¿A dónde van los dólares? Esta es una de las principales formas que USAID, ahorita les explico qué es USAID, gasta el dinero de Estados Unidos. Entonces, y este es del medio Daily Wire. No soy súper fan, pero pues por lo menos tienen otra perspectiva que no es la de los medios, muchas veces no es de los medios tradicionales. Entonces, en medio de una controversia, y lo traduje del inglés, entonces hay muchas palabras que... En medio de una controversia sobre un posible cierre de la agencia para, y esto es lo que quiere decir el USAID, Agencia para el Desarrollo Internacional, que suena pues muy bonito, pues sí, que quien no quiere... ¿Por qué Estados Unidos no debería de apoyar el desarrollo internacional? Si tanto mal han hecho, deberían de empezar a ayudar a construir escuelas y a acabar con la hambruna en, no sé, Nigeria, Uganda. Es lo que mucha gente cree que es para lo que servía esta agencia, pero está saliendo que muchos de los fondos y mucho del dinero que están dando a otros países para el desarrollo, pues es el desarrollo nada más para un lado y el desarrollo más bien de ciertas ideologías, ideología de género, diversidad, equidad e inclusión, que aunque suena muy bonito, las siglas diversidad, equidad e inclusión, pues suena quien no quiere más diversidad y que todos sean equitativos y que sean más incluyentes, pero lo que pasa muchas veces con los progres y la izquierda es que se agarran palabras, democracia es una de ellas también en Estados Unidos, y tergiverizan. Otra vez, a veces se me van las palabras, perdón. Y pues cambian el significado de estas palabras, cambian la intención con la que hacen las cosas y con las que hacen ya estoy apanicada de que no estoy en vivo. Cambia lo que quiere decir, pero la gente y el público en general se queda con la idea del significado original. Por ejemplo, diversidad. Pues sí, que todos sean diversos y aceptar a más personas y ser buena onda con todos, pero es diversidad de cierto tipo nada más y... Por ejemplo, diversidad de opinión, pues no cuenta, igual que la igualdad, la diversidad, la inclusión de otras opiniones diferentes, pues tampoco cuenta. Luego, equidad, pues mucha gente cree y lo relaciona mucho con igualdad, que son dos cosas diferentes, son dos palabras diferentes, en especial en inglés quieren decir dos cosas muy diferentes. Equidad, pues normalmente es... Lo que mucha gente cree es que todos vamos a salir adelante y todos vamos a tener no solo la misma oportunidad, pero el mismo final. O sea, todos vamos a acabar igual. Pero, pues en realidad, lo que está pasando en muchas escuelas de Estados Unidos, que hablé en inglés en el último live, es que hacen que a todos les empiece a ir peor. Y en vez de hacer que todos se suban al mejor nivel, pues que todos se bajen al nivel donde están todos los demás y ya, pues iba a decir una palabra mala. No sé cuánto puedo decir palabras en lives, pero estoy hablando más como hablo normalmente, porque es bastante ensayado cuando hacemos videos no en vivo. Y la inclusión, pues otra vez, todos pensaban que inclusión era, pues hay que incluir a personas que tienen capacidades diferentes, hay que hacer que todos puedan, por ejemplo, cruzar la calle de manera... incluyente, poner cosas en el piso para que la gente que usa bastones que no pueden ver bien, pues pueda leer en braille qué quiere decir, ponerle el sonidito cuando hay un semáforo para las personas igual que no ven, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Pero no, es nada más inclusión de cierto tipo, inclusión de la comunidad de alfabeto, inclusión de ideas locas y ideologías locas que están metidas hasta en escuelas, en hospitales, etcétera, etcétera. Y pues con USAID, todo este gran rollo que me acabo de echar es porque USAID o la Agencia de Desarrollo Internacional, mucha gente creía que una vez más era para dar apoyos importantes para combatir la hambruna, y etcétera. Pero no, la portavoz de la Casa Blanca, Caroline Leavitt, dijo que ahora que se metieron a ver a dónde se estaba destinando todo ese dinero, era, por ejemplo, 1.5 millones de dólares para promover la diversidad, equidad e inclusión en Serbia. No sé si en Serbia necesiten mucho de eso, si les haya sido útil, pero para la gran mayoría de la gente, bueno, para nadie es útil empezar a meter este tipo de ideologías, igual que $70,000 para un musical de diversidad y de equidad e inclusión en Irlanda. ¿Por qué? ¿Quién sabe? $47,000 para una ópera transgénero en Colombia. Si hay algún colombiano viéndonos, díganme si es muy necesario que se haga una ópera transgénero con $47,000 destinados a eso en vez de a causas que realmente podrían ya sea o ayudar al país o pues que dejen de tratar de colonizar con estas ideologías al resto del mundo también, porque no les sirvieron en su propio país. $32,000 para un cómic transgénero en Perú. Otra vez, si hay alguien aquí de Perú, les es muy útil tener un cómic transgénero por allá. Es lo que más necesita su país ahorita para desarrollarse. No sé, ya me dirán ustedes. Pero ejemplifica hacia dónde va pues todo este tipo de pensamiento que tienen los progres y la izquierda de que su forma de hacer las cosas y a lo que ellos creen que es lo más importante y lo que se tiene que señalar más es a lo que se debe destinar no solo dinero y apoyos y tiempo y etcétera, pero también recursos que podrían ser usados también para sus propios ciudadanos. Entonces, parece que van a empezar a tratar de demoler la agencia. Lo que han hecho es la han cerrado por ahora en lo que revisan a dónde más se destinó tanto dinero y para qué. Y a través de esto, también de estas investigaciones del detective Elon Musk, porque él es uno de los que llevan todo el departamento de eficiencia gubernamental o como se traduzca en español. Y veremos qué más van a seguir descubriendo. En la sección en inglés vamos a hablar un poco más sobre eso y sobre a qué se destinan también todos estos dólares y pues los cambios reales, impacto real que han tenido en el mundo, básicamente colonizando con una ideología en específico. Y en otras noticias que pues también del señor trompetas, Donald Trump firma decreto para impedir que atletas trans participen en deportes femeninos. Este artículo es de Animal Político, que ya sabemos hacia dónde se va. Espérense, ¿para dónde está la izquierda? Aquí, para acá. Son muy, muy progres, pero es el único artículo que pude encontrar en español que más o menos hacía sentido sin tener que traducir uno, porque a veces cuando traduces cosas, en especial cuando trata de la comunidad trans, pues ponen pronombres raros que prefiero nada más ahorrarme. Pero el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, firmó un decreto para evitar que las mujeres trans participen en competiciones deportivas femeninas. El presidente de Estados Unidos firmó hoy un decreto que prohíbe participar en deportes en un nuevo ataque a esa comunidad. Una vez más estamos viendo el sesgo que tiene Animal Político, porque no, o sea, bueno, a mi consideración y a la de muchos que votaron por este señor y hasta los que no, varias feministas que también ya están hartas de todo esto, el hecho de que la autoidentificación y de que la comunidad y los activistas hayan llegado al punto donde se habla más de pues que un hombre cuando quiera puede decidir que ahora sí por sus huevos puede ser mujer, pues realmente abre las puertas a muchas personas porque yo creo que existen las personas trans de adebis, pues, pero que es una minoría de la minoría, ahora sí, y normalmente no demandan y no hacen y no piden las cosas que los activistas y los hombres que por sus huevos deciden decir que soy mujer y se ponen peluca y ya son mujeres. Y esos son los que están tratando de impedir ahora Donald Trump y Estados Unidos que entren a deportes femeninos, a quitar, por lo que se trabajó mucho durante mucho tiempo, de abrir ligas femeniles, de abrir espacios para que mujeres puedan competir de manera justa, porque biológicamente las mujeres y los hombres somos muy diferentes. Hay muchas diferencias en la densidad de huesos, por ejemplo, en la oxigenación. Las mujeres tienen oxigenación diferente y más baja que la de los hombres. Entonces, que se haya ahora sí hecho un esfuerzo porque esas ligas que tanto tiempo tomó tratar de abrir y de hacer que sean espacios seguros para que las mujeres puedan competir en deportes y todo pues que también fue un poco un impulso feminista, pero pues bueno, porque entraron varias niñas y mujeres que ahora tienen carreras y que han tenido mucho, les ha ido muy bien, Serena Williams, por ejemplo, y ahora lo que estaba pasando es que con la autoidentificación, a muchas, en especial en escuelas y universidades, prepas, secundaria, etcétera, muchos chavos que no les iba muy bien en sus deportes como hombres, dijeron, bueno, pues ahora que me puedo autoidentificar como mujer, voy a decir que soy mujer, voy a hacer cambios mínimos, tal vez tome algunas hormonas que medio cambien mi rendimiento, pero no mucho, y voy a empezar a ganar todas estas competencias que normalmente pues eran para mujeres biológicas. Y un ejemplo y una historia y una de las personas que logró que se impulsara hasta la Casa Blanca y ahora que se firmara esta orden ejecutiva de prohibir hombres trans en deportes femeninos, mujeres trans en deportes femeninos, fue Riley Gaines. Y su historia, si no se la saben, ella competía en natación, entró un güey de la nada a decir que era mujer, ganó todas las competencias, le quitaron el trofeo a Riley Gaines para dárselo a este hombre para la foto, porque habían de hecho empatado. Se lo quitaron a Riley Gaines y dijeron, no, es que la mujer trans tiene que salir en la foto porque se ve mejor que salga la foto con esta persona. Entonces nadie más quería hablar, todas las demás niñas y deportistas que estaban compitiendo y que les habían pasado cosas similares. Hay una historia muy fea en voleibol había también un güey que se creía mujer y no sé cómo es el término en voleibol, pero echó la pelota y le pegó en la cabeza a una niña y se acabó cayendo en el piso y se le rompió, se descalabró y terminó paralítica. Ya ha estado mejorando su estado físico y su condición, pero tienen consecuencias reales que muchos de la izquierda, muchos de los progres, muchos de los que no querían que ganara este señor, querían esconder y llevaban años pudiendo... me pego a cada rato con el micrófono. Llevaban años teniendo la habilidad de esconder y ahora pues el resto de Estados Unidos dijo, no, ya hasta aquí, ya nos estamos dando cuenta, ya estamos empezando a ver medios alternativos donde sí hablan de las consecuencias de este tipo de decisiones. Entonces, pues, qué bueno. Y esperemos que... Tengo que hacer más investigación sobre si ha llegado a México o no este tipo de... Si saben, pónganlo en los comentarios. He empezado a investigar, pero no he llegado muy lejos. Pero sí hay ejemplos de que esto está empezando a pasar en México, en especial con personas con menores de edad. Entonces déjenmelo en los comentarios y lo investigo y chance hago un video sobre eso. Ya se me acabaron los 15 minutos. Ahora sí ya me fui a 16 porque ya había hecho toda esta historia. Entonces nada más fue como práctica. Pero sí, ya se van porque querían la parte en español. Buenas noches, que tengan un excelente resto de su noche y su día de mañana. Y si no, pues continuamos en inglés con Guy y nos vamos a meter más a varios de estos temas que toqué. Entonces, muchas gracias y que tengan una excelente noche. Y ahora sí, I'll go
Okay,
back.
so we're going to get to the English portion here?
Yes. Oh, hold on. There we
No?
go.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, the first story we're going to start with today is Argentina pulling out from the WHO. Javier Milei is the leader of Argentina, and he's decided to pull out of the WHO. He's following in the footsteps of Donald Trump. And if you know anything about the WHO, you know they've been trying to take away a country's sovereignty. So the fact that countries are beginning to pull out may be a very good thing. The way they've been trying to take country sovereignty is through international pandemic treaties. They've been having countries sign these treaties that would basically sign away their sovereignty in case of another pandemic. The reason the reason countries found this enticing is this allows for no accountability for the leadership of that country. Basically, if there's a pandemic, the leadership of a country can say, the WHO is taking care of this and they're setting our policies, therefore we're not accountable for it. You want local accountability in a case of any crisis, whether it's a hurricane or a pandemic. So the fact that countries were signing away their sovereignty and their accountability, it was just a bad idea. Also, the fact that Donald Trump not only pulled out of the WHO, but it looks like the U.S. is no longer going to fund it, is a very good thing. Hopefully other countries follow suit. A lot of these policies the WHO was setting, such as transgender policies or pandemic policies just went completely awry. They said they were the science rather than science is continuously evolving. You weren't able to find out a lot of their research. They just came out with blanket statements and policies that everybody was supposed to follow.
And again, the fact that a lot of people don't know this, but after this past pandemic, I don't know if we can say it, YouTube got mad at us last time because we said the word jab and the word too much. But what happened after the 2019 one, and 2022, etc., was that they started to get together and try to find new ways to implement and what they would do in case of emergency again. And they didn't relax, or they didn't look at what had been done during this past one and maybe what they could learn, but rather they were going to be trying to make countries sign even more restrictive measures by the WHO, and giving more access to the WHO, to their governance, to their people, their citizens, and also to their health systems. So a lot of people don't know that about the WHO, and also the fact that, well, it's financed by some countries more than it is by others. So what does that get those countries? How much say do those countries have rather than smaller countries or countries that don't pay as much into it?
Yeah, when it comes to vaccines, you're going to have certain vaccines that WHO is going to mandate if these treaties were signed. And we know that research was hidden and a lot of corruption is now coming out, and a lot of money was made by a lot of people. The fact that Anthony Fauci got immunity is really upsetting a lot of people, but a multivariate approach by countries would be much better. But when countries don't want accountability and they're signing away their sovereignty, there is no multivariate approach. There's one approach unilaterally across the world, and if they take the wrong approach, the whole world's going to suffer. If you have a multivariate approach, you can see what works, what doesn't. If countries are doing things that don't work, they can change their approach to match the countries that are doing better during the pandemic. So do you have anything else before we go to the next story? We got quite a few stories today, though.
Yes, we do. So we'll probably do like shorter bits and opinion, but are important things that I guess people should know about.
I think the through line through a lot of the stories today is surprisingly Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Almost every story has their hand on it in some way, shape, or form. This first particular story was Donald Trump was the first to walk away from the WHO, and he has a lot of influence on Javier Milei.
Yeah.
So going into the next story, though, we have Apple and Tim Cook is partnering with Elon Musk and Starlink. Now, I don't think this is such a willing partnership. The fact that we know Tim Cook does not like Elon Musk, and I don't think he wanted to support him, but he had very little choice in this, considering Apple is kind of conceding to Starlink and integrating satellite integration into their iOS now. That means every new Apple phone will have direct to satellite within the phone and in the iOS if you want to activate it. So during emergencies like hurricanes and things like that, or if you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert, you're going to have access to on your cell phone. It's going to be good anywhere in the world. Apple originally went with a company called Globalstar, and that plan didn't work out. Their satellites were in a higher Earth orbit, so the latency was very high. So if you know anything about Starlink, you know they have thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit, so the latency is a lot less. You have anything to add to this?
Well, and for the longest time, I mean, Apple and Tim Cook have been kind of on a rivalry with Elon Musk, as a lot of the tech CEOs that usually look down upon Elon Musk because of the way he does things differently. Now, my personal opinion of Elon Musk is there's days I like him, there's days I think he's an idiot, but overall, I think, for example, with Doge and with certain aspects of the things he apparently has planned for a while now, might be interesting. But the fact that now they're partnering up, and that also Elon Musk has floated about for years now that he wants to create a phone. Well, what does it mean now when Apple is kind of also opening not only its iOS, but maybe even ideas or more partnership opportunities, even though Tim Cook and Elon Musk really don't like each other?
Well, it's not only lower latency because the satellites are in a lower Earth orbit, but it has higher bandwidth, which really appealed to not only Apple, but Android. So a lot of carriers of Android are going to start signing contracts with Starlink as well to bring Starlink to Android. So your Android phones will have universal reach around the world, which is a pretty good thing. I would say Apple is kind of one of these holdouts when it comes to DEI, their ideology. They're really sticking to it, and I have to give it to them. Maybe they were true believers, but I don't fundamentally align with them, and neither does Elon Musk. So the fact that they are being forced in this pretty huge deal for as far as monetary deals go. But I would also say Elon Musk was originally going to come out with a phone, like you said.
Yeah.
He's really downplayed that idea over more recent years, and I think he's seen the power of Starlink being a universal provider for Android and iOS.
But also, what does that mean? And is that a little bit scary that not only now does he want to dominate cars, the sky, probably the ocean eventually, but also like all of the telecommunications in the world, like that much power in one man's hands, one man that has been proven to, get a little testy whenever anybody makes jokes of him on X and then blocks their accounts, even though he says he wants free speech. I mean, there's all considerations that even if you like the guy, even if you agree with a lot of what he says or what he wants to do, might be interesting to still consider and not evangelize everybody that we agree with on most things.
There was something else I wanted to say. I'm almost kind of forgetting it now, but
Tim Cook, Apple.
No, I guess we're just
ideology.
We can go on to
DEI.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. This is going to be a huge jump in technology. There's only a few governments that have access to space and launching satellites into space. So you're going to have China and U.S. really being the big competitors in this next. I guess you would call these modems in space almost, is how the technology is working. So cellular service and unlimited cellular service around the world will only be able to be provided by a few providers and within a few governments. Russia also has access to space, but they don't have the finances to really do as many launches as China or the U.S. Through Starlink. Mm-hmm. But the next story was this political story, and I know we had a little bit of disagreement, and we were kind of both right about this one.
Politico?
Yeah. So do you want to go into it?
I need to adjust this, so hold on.
Okay, so Politico got funding through the U.S. government.
So what is Politico?
Politico is a news organization within the United States.
With a very heavy left-wing bias.
Liberal leaning. They claim not to have any leaning, but everybody.
So does every other media.
Everybody kind of knew they did.
Yeah.
And now it's come out. They've taken $8.1 million through the government through these $1,000 subscriptions. So why don't you take it away there?
Well, there was a rumor that it came out first saying that because of all of the USAID, United States Agency for International Development, or something like that, it came out that they were also now funding news organizations, and Politico got embroiled in all of this on Twitter by someone claiming that USAID was funding or was giving funding to Politico, which would be weird because Politico is a U.S. organization. And then it came out that, okay, no, it wasn't USAID, but there has been a lot of money wasted on paying for subscriptions for government agents or government agencies specifically to a lot of news organizations that lean left.
These weren't just subscriptions. These were subscriptions made specifically to launder money, I believe. It was a news organization that wasn't providing a very big service. Most news organizations charged $10. They had what was called a premium subscription for $1,000.
What were they giving?
They weren't giving anything. It was a money laundering scheme, and in return they were giving liberal talking points in all their articles. Mm-hmm. And they were one of the first organizations to uncover. They were trying to hang MAG out to dry for the last 10 years. So, but it first came to be where people found out Politico didn't pay any of their employees, and it was the first time ever they had missed a pay period. So that's kind of
how it all started.
That's how it all came to be. But originally they thought it was through USAID. And a lot of things have been coming out through that. And even though Politico hadn't been taking the money from USAID, they had been taking government money. But BBC, on the other hand, had been taking 8% of their total revenue from USAID.
Yeah, because they're from the UK. So technically, it's an international development thing.
Well, it's interesting because in the UK, you have to pay taxes to have your TV. And when you do that, that money is supposed to go to the BBC. How many different ways do you want to fund a propaganda organization like the BBC?
Well, and I mean, having lived in and coming from Canada, we know where a lot of the government subsidies go for publications and news organizations. The CBC, I mean, there's a whole list. If you're interested, Rebel News has a lot of coverage on that. Rebel News is an independent Canadian news organization, but the Canadian government was subsidizing and even now asking Facebook to also help subsidize and fund their own essentially state-sponsored media, which is the only media you can get in Canada that people consider serious and that a lot of people were kind of relying on information on. And it just goes to show how deep and how far-reaching a lot of these tentacles are with the bias and ideology that is being injected into people without them even knowing.
Yeah, and I think there's a big through line with the USAID for all the rest of these stories. Mm-hmm. Are we going to switch a little bit or no?
Sure.
Okay, the next story we're going to go into is Musk and Doge. Musk, the USAID was one of the first agencies he went after, and this thing is a black hole that just keeps giving scandal after scandal after scandal. All these liberal global organizations seem to be had been funded through there, but Musk is talking about going after the Treasury Department next. I'm thinking the Treasury Department is gonna just have even more nuggets of truth, I guess we would call it. But a lot of people think the Treasury Department just does the budget, finance, and does tax collections, but that's not true. One of the big purposes of the administration or the Treasury Department is international sanctions. The whole sanction apparatus of the United States actually runs through think tanks that come out of the Treasury Department. So when they're thinking about sanctions on Russia, sanctions on China, these think tanks are the ones that actually come up with it and implement it. So that gives them a lot of power, and it's going to be interesting what comes out in these internal documents. It's really when Trump's appointing these people to take control of these departments, or they look into these departments, they're finding all these documents. And Musk has hired a bunch of 19-year-olds, and the liberals are freaking out about this, but these are people that aren't really connected to the government. So when they're going into these departments and they're looking for financial things, they're able to find it non-biasly. Usually when you're having people look into these departments, they're other government workers, so they're not always actually looking to find the dirt. Do you have anything to say about the...
Yeah, I mean, also what is happening with a lot of the Doge and Elon Musk and people saying, how can Elon Musk go in and do all this? But things have been coming out, and they have been very interesting to see how, again, as I've said it a million times, how far-reaching all of this is, and where the actual money that people are paying taxes into and essentially being forced to pay into, and they just keep getting higher, where all of that money is going, and what the agencies that hadn't had any oversight for who knows how long. I mean, being from Mexico, there's a lot of people that are always saying how bad our government is and all the corruption and etc. But I think Guy once made a very interesting point saying that like the bigger governments like the US, Canada, the UK, they all are like teeming with corruption as well, but they hide it better. They're just better at hiding it because for coming from Canada and seeing all the discovery that happened with all the Chinese agents, for example, being infiltrated in the government and nobody saying anything about it. It's just about being able to hide it better, not that they're better than...
Well, I think it's two different kinds of corruption, really. What you're having is smaller countries that are really the subject of the corruption, and the larger countries are the ones that are financing the corruption. Countries like China, countries like the United States, even Canada, they're financing this liberal ideology on a global scale. So it's pretty interesting. The next story we were going to go into is related to this too. Okay. And I know we were talking about it earlier, but it's the Endowment for Democracy and U.S. aid. We've been talking a lot about U.S. aid, but they never just make one organization that's a CIA front, which the Endowment for Democracy and U.S. aid has been a blatant CIA fund. And that's how they've been spreading this global liberal ideology on a worldwide scale. And when I say global liberal ideology, I'm talking about people have only really noticed it because liberalism has gone way awry lately with transgendered ideology and vaccines and a bunch of other things. Yes. So that's why people are really starting to see what's actually happened and what this funding is absolutely blatant. You're having transgender people reading books to kids in third world countries, and they're funding this to the tune of millions of dollars.
In our opinion, they're friends and etc.
Oh no, it's
no. So just so we don't get in trouble with YouTube, we're saying this all in our opinion.
It's what it is. Well,
we don't want to get sued or anything. But yeah, so from Brian Berletic, former U.S. Marine, says the U.S. NED funding is a national security threat. U.S. political interference through its National Endowment for Democracy, which is what NED stands for, funding NGOs, media organizations, opposition political parties, protesters, and other means of subversion is just the first few steps along a single spectrum toward the political capture of a targeted nation. And this is how they get in, and how a lot of things that happened around the world and have been happening around the world could maybe be explained, again, in our opinion and in Brian Berlick's opinion.
Well, these are the Endowment for Democracy and USAID are the tools for regime change that the U.S. is using. Mm-hmm. And that's why you see a lot of these color revolutions happening around the world. Some people may agree with these color revolutions. I don't. And a lot of this funding came in well before 2014 in Ukraine. So there is a long history of the Endowment for Democracy doing this funding in Ukraine, which led to a war. Also, you have other funding that to the tune of billions of dollars going into Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq. I mean, you follow the money from these agencies that really work outside the oversight of regular government. They view themselves taking their funding from the government, but not having to show where they're actually spending it. It's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. So the fact that all this is getting uncovered, yes. I'm wondering what's going to come next.
Oh, we have a government from Gabriel Arceo Reyes saying the best example of corruption is Donald Trump. He has a lot against him, and the U.S. passed it, didn't care about it.
Yeah, well, I will say this: Donald Trump's first term, he talked a lot and he didn't do a bunch. The best thing that ever happened to him was Joe Biden. So I think the same slogan Russia's using, which is "Thank you, Joe Biden," I think Donald Trump will be using too. Donald Trump may have had corruption in his past, but when it comes to this new term in government, at least the 2 weeks he's really realigning the government with the people by disclosing documents and the corruption that's going on inside the government. Every other president, once they got in, kept their mouth shut, didn't say anything, didn't release any documents, and the appointments Donald Trump is making are people that were literally enemies of the state. The person he's appointing to head the FBI or the intelligence agency or the CDC are the people these agencies directly went after, like Robert F. Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel. And if these people get their appointments, they are going to be releasing all kinds of classified information that the government never wanted released. And this is a really come to Jesus moment for the U.S. government.
And a lot of those were Democrats that are now behind him and that were kicked out from the Democratic Party because they were starting to uncover and trying to show people what was happening, which is also why there was so much pushback, I think, against Trump during and running up to these past 4 years, but running up to him becoming a president again, because they're all running scared and they're all trying to keep things undercover. So a lot of the corruption scandals that surround Donald Trump, once you look into it, once the research comes out, once the actual verdicts came out, actually kind of crumbled. But a lot of people stay with the main media narrative, mainstream media narrative, that it is true, that everything that they put on him was true as well.
When I talk about Trump,
not to just defend him, but
when I'm talking about Trump corruption, I'm not talking about Trump corruption within the government. I'm actually talking about before he was president, and maybe his the Trump University was one thing.
Deals, yeah.
But when it came to his corruption in government, I don't think he had as much corruption in government as people think. There was a lot of lawfare going on, and there were only two presidents that lost money when they went into and took the presidency. One was John F. Kennedy, and the second one was Donald Trump. Donald Trump lost over $1 billion when he took the presidency. So it's pretty interesting for him to be one of the only presidents to have lost money and lost status by taking the presidency. Now, the second term, he is going to be able to regain his status, and it is going to. I'm hoping he can really. I think he's leading the country for his legacy and for his family's legacy. And he's wanting to really uncover not only a lot of lawfare that happened against him, but all the corruption that's happened over the past 100 years in the U.S.
And funnily enough, the ones that are going against him and calling him corrupt and saying he has been corrupting government are the ones that are actually making money while being in office or while being in the government, like Nancy Pelosi, like, what's the name of that woman that thinks she's
AOC?
American Indian?
Oh,
No, the other one.
I don't know.
Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, Elizabeth Warren.
All of those people do make a lot of money and have tripled or quadrupled their wealth while they've been in office. So that actually counts as corruption, but they don't want that discovered, so they'll go against their enemy and try to paint, again, confession through projection. They confess to their crimes through doing what they say the other person is doing.
Yeah, the next story that we're going to go into wasn't really a story, but it was really the Trump revolution that's happening. He is moving at light speed, and there is no opposition to what he's doing. He's really creating a revolution, and the deep state does not know what to do right now because he is taking control of each department and declassifying information they do not want to have declassified, and they don't know what to do about it. Musk is heading Doge, which is making recommendations to declassify a lot of the stuff. And they're saying Musk bad, Trump bad, stop. And it's like the government for the last 50 years, 100 years is the one that has been exposed to steal billions of dollars and assassinate. And the U.S. government is the one. And taking the lives of some major figures like John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Trump is declassifying all these files. A lot of the stuff is going to become public. So when you declassify taking the life of John F. Kennedy and these files come out, it's really going to turn the general public against the FBI and against the CIA. So it becomes a lot easier for him to dismantle these organizations and maybe not totally dismantle them, but really limit their reach and have the size of the organization itself. So, and he's really going to fold it into the government so the government can have a lot more oversight over what these agencies are actually doing. Because I know the CIA and the FBI don't have as much oversight as they actually need.
And I think, not just for, I'll speak personally, but I'll say us, not just for me and why I'm interested in what's happening with Trump and what's happening with the U.S. government at the moment right now and what had been happening before is that not only do they have an extraordinary amount of power and influence around the world, but a lot of governments are doing the exact same things that they are, just they have way less money. But it is interesting now to see how this one man surrounded by, people that are trying to do the same to expose corruption in the government and et cetera, is actually being able to do it. Milei is another interesting example of somebody actually going in and doing the things that nobody has been able to do or willing to do in the past who knows how many years. And especially being in Mexico, seeing all of this is like, it's interesting, and it's interesting to analyze it as well, not just to, I feel like we throw a lot of flowers and, oh my God, it's so great that Trump is doing this and that, but it's because it's so interesting and it's so revolutionary. I think the left also thinks the same thing. They're just mad at it.
Because
it's just interesting to watch.
What was happening, not just in the U.S., but through governments all around the world through this corruption, the government and the people are going further and further and further away. And eventually when that happens, a revolution or violence starts to occur. So this is one of the few times I can actually think of a government coming clean and showing the actions of their past and how it was wrong. And the reason Trump is the figure that can do it is because the government came after him. So now he's able to expose the government and the corruption that they have done, not just to him, but to the general public. Yeah. And it's really realigning the general public with the media, with the FBI, with the CIA, if he's able to clean these departments out and really show the mistakes of their past and to say, we're not going to do this again, or we're going to try to do this differently, and we're going to set new policies and new transparency policies and things like this. It's amazing what he's been able to do so far just through executive order. Mm-hmm. He does not even have his major,
congressional approval?
People he's putting in
the approval for a lot of his cabinet.
Yeah, his cabinet. So his cabinet positions have not been approved yet. Only a couple of them have. And if he gets the next 3 cabinet approvals, the amount of things that are going to come out is going to be absolutely jaw-dropping, I think.
And yes, once again, I mean, I think it might not work. Again, like this might be a huge stupid idea and backfire in his face, but at least number one, he's trying it. At least number two, things are actually happening to see what happens when you actually go there and do the things that so many presidents and prime ministers and etc. have promised all throughout the world that they're going to do, and corruption and manage money better. At least we're seeing a different way to do it. And I think this is what shocks and angers a lot of people. It's that it's kind of diving into the unknown, but also it is what the people and the public had been demanding by electing Trump, but also just in general by seeing and starting to be able to see things through independent media, through people speaking out that used to be on the inside and now came out and told their stories, told what they know, because there's more open means of communication. Now we don't rely on just watching the TV.
Yeah, and the next story is actually directly connected to the last story, and it's how is Trump able to do all this? He's using a pretty solid legal theory that everybody that serves in the government and all agencies serve to the executive branch and the president, and therefore he can hire and fire anybody he wants at any time, and he can pretty much disband entire branches of the government if he so chooses. Now, a lot of these agencies he's investigating and a lot of these people he's firing are threatening lawsuits. And apparently what's coming out is the Trump administration wants them to file lawsuits because he believes that the Supreme Court will side with him because of prior legal precedents. And if they do this, and the Supreme Court does side with President Trump, that's going to give him even more power that can't be challenged in the future. So the Democrats in the United States are really biding their time and waiting. They're waiting for the perfect opportunity where Trump maybe does overstep his bounds so they can file a lawsuit and set a precedent in their favor to stop him. Because right now, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to stop him. And he's right. They do serve under the executive branch, and he does have the right to fire anybody he wants. It's not Elon Musk firing these people. Elon Musk is making recommendations to Trump, and Trump is the one taking the recommendations, signing the executive orders, or just directly firing people.
Well, didn't also already somebody try to set up articles of impeachment against him? Was it Chuck Schumer?
Yeah, but
who was it?
Okay, we have to realize when we talk about articles of impeachment here, I think they previously tried to impeach him 3 times, and they did have the numbers when it came to Congress. This time they don't have the numbers, so they're not going to be able to impeach him. And this time he has the general public on his side. There is no media apparatus to go against him. He's really... the way he's realigning the general public with his administration is really unheard of. The amount of liberals that are coming over and siding with Trump now because he's exposing the corruption that has happened in the past is pretty impressive.
And I mean, also with having all of these other ex-Democrats coming to his side, like Tulsi Gabbard, like RFK Jr., and who are bringing ideas that might also be good ideas and rescuable ideas from the left and from the more... not center left, the classical liberalism that most people used to think of the Democratic Party as. They're bringing it in. They're bringing in a lot of like people that are concerned about health with all the whole Make America Healthy Again movement. So yes, I think this group of people might actually make a difference now that things are moving forward even faster.
Yeah. And next story involves Trump again, but this was probably the biggest announcement of today, and it was the U.S. wants to take over Gaza. Oh, yeah. Now, this is going to touch on the third rail, which YouTube hates when we talk about anything Israel, but I guess we're going to talk about it because it was maybe the biggest story of today. And it really shows how Trump is commanding the media. He can simply bring up Gaza and they're no longer talking about USAID or any of these other things he's doing. So he can keep going back to the subject matter even if he does nothing, if he just wants to basically distract the press. But I think this has a lot less to do with the U.S. taking over Gaza and a lot more to do with suggesting something that hasn't been done before. I know he has meetings with Israel and Jordan, and now they're suggesting they have other plans and other things that they can suggest. Now, for the last decade, nobody had another plan. It was either a one-state solution or a two-state solution, and things were all jumbled up over there. Mm-hmm. But having a third party come in, and it's basically everything's leveled, so they're going to have to reconstruct anyway. But I don't know. I don't want to see people get displaced off their land, but it's basically a nonstop war zone and people can't conduct their life. So if Egypt and Jordan are willing to take them, and the U.S. is maybe willing to build houses and things like this for the people, I would like to see that, because I don't think it's a lot of the Palestinians that want the war. It has to do with Hamas and their government. So maybe just breaking free from that Hamas government will give these people a chance to live in peace and have real economic freedom. I don't know.
And yeah, it goes back to the whole whose territory is it, etc. Like, I try to steer kind of wide berth away from these kinds of topics.
Yeah, but we all know it's not the U.S.'s territory. So for the U.S. to step in there as a temporary solution where it's not necessarily Israel and it's not necessarily Palestinian. It's a third group that would take control of the land.
Well, like the UK did so many years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where they made the first mistake, was giving Israel that land. It's so fought over, man.
It's a topic I try not to delve into, not because I have any specific opinions, it's because I have no opinions on it.
Maybe let's talk about what he actually wants to do with the Palestinians. He wants Jordan and Egypt to take them. Jordan and Egypt have made clear in the past they do not want the Palestinians, but the U.S. is the one funding Egypt to the tune of billions of dollars a year, and I'm sure they're giving Jordan funding too. So he does have a lot of leverage to either increase that funding or take away that funding if they don't want to take the Palestinian refugees. So I think because Trump is such a hard negotiator, he is the one kind of person that can get it done. Also, you have to have Saudi Arabia and the other Middle Eastern countries kind of get in line with the rebuilding of Gaza if this is the case. A lot of people are suggesting Trump is making a deal with Saudi Arabia specifically to fund the reconstruction of Gaza if he's able to get out the Palestinians, which would kind of align the Muslim world. Mm-hmm. And that's what the 7 agreements he got last time. What were those called? The Middle East peace agreements?
Aha.
Anyway, he had the 7 Middle East peace agreements last time, and he was able to get those done through economic negotiation with the Muslim countries. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess that's it for that story.
Yes.
Okay, next maybe we'll go into France and Germany. France and Germany are quickly becoming ungovernable. France is getting close to another non-confidence vote with Emmanuel Macron in a few months. It's expected that if the non-confidence vote takes place and the election takes place, that Le Pen will win. And Le Pen is the right-wing party in France. So it's going to be interesting to see if Emmanuel Macron allows himself to have this vote of non-confidence, or he just walks away. A lot of people are expecting that he has too much pride and he will just walk away before they have a vote of non-confidence, because if that vote comes in, Le Pen will win and Macron will be pushed out, and it will be a sign of kind of humiliation.
And also of kind of realignment that we're seeing, not just in the US, but also like close indications in Canada, with Trudeau kind of holding on to power as hard as he can, and then also in other countries in Europe that are starting to have these waves of different ways of thinking and of different parties that nobody ever thought could come back up or could even come up in the first place, becoming more and more popular. And I think it's because of the, as we keep saying, the overreach of certain biases, certain ideologies, certain people and parties and etc. that are clinging on for dear life to remain in power, even when what they have done has not proven to be, either what the people want or effective.
And we were pretty geopolitics heavy today, and we're going to go back into geopolitics in a minute. But before we do, since we're on the topic of France, I do like Candace Owens, and I've been watching her documentaries series called Becoming Brigitte.
Becoming Brigitte.
And that's Emmanuel Macron's wife. And man, the things that have been coming out are just pretty incredible and jaw-dropping. She's claiming that Brigitte Macron is a man, and she has quite a lot of evidence to back it up. But not only that, there's a lot of ties to the French version of the CIA, and that the relationship between her or him and Emmanuel Macron was kind of
intentional.
Intentional, and then Emmanuel Macron was groomed to become
was forced to like her.
Well, no, and then
because we can't say that word,
and was groomed to become.
We can't say that word.
I already said it, so just let me finish the sentence.
Fine.
I was groomed to become the president of France. So if you're not watching Candace Owens and the Becoming Brigitte series, I do highly recommend it. It's slow moving, and
yes.
I think what she's trying to do is bait them into a lawsuit, because if she can get a lawsuit, they have to sue her in the state of Tennessee where she's from, and she will be able to get discovery. And if she gets discovery, she will have the hard evidence she actually needs.
And again, we're just discussing, because they're very litigious people, apparently, the Macrons. So to Mr. and Mr. Macron, these are just our opinions, and we're just discussing a show.
I'm not scared of him. I'll tell him.
I'm not scared of him, but I was kind of making a joke, but okay.
The amount of... okay, let's just go on to the next subject, maybe.
Sure. Germany?
Okay, the next one's Germany. So much like the French elections, the German elections are actually coming up, and they don't have to have a recall election or anything like that. It's on February 23rd, I believe. And again, the right-wing party in Germany is absolutely surging, and the party that's currently in power is completely EU globalist aligned, and they are dipping. So it's fully expected on the 23rd that the right-wing party will take power. The issue with this is I think the current party that's in power is going to play it much like Canada and France did. They're going to create a coalition with all the parties that lost. So even though that they lost, they're going to be able to kind of block the party that wins the election from doing anything, and they're going to be the ones that kind of control government. And this seems to be the globalist playbook, or the EU playbook. You're seeing a lot of right-wing parties come up in the EU, and constantly to have a stopgap and kind of prevent them from doing anything, they're creating these coalitions. But these coalitions are just making the general public in these countries upset, and having the right-wing parties even win bigger elections the next time, and really aligning with the people of the country.
Yes.
One of the big issues.
Wait, where are we?
Go to any camera. You can go to the two-shot if you want.
Sure.
So one of the big issues in Germany, which is becoming the big issue all over the world, was immigration, and that's why a lot of these right-wing parties are able to surge. And we're currently in Mexico, but I think one of the big issues in the next Mexican election is going to be immigration, because they're being flooded with people from the U.S. right now. So it's going to be very interesting if economics, immigration, and crime are the big...
Yes, because whatever party would want to, kind of go against the most popular one right now in Mexico could touch on the points of the things that have not been done, but also the things that have been done and in 6 years probably gone way worse. But two things, we're running out of battery and we're coming up on an hour. So you tell me what you want to do.
Okay, I guess we can stop it there for today.
Sure. Thank you for watching. Thank you if you stayed for the whole English thing. We are, because he almost never gets to speak because he doesn't speak Spanish. So he's very heavy into geopolitics, and I'm a little bit more cultural, social, etc. But we make a good combination. But I'll try to bring in more topics that are more social, cultural, etc. But if you're interested in geopolitics, then great. What else?
That's it.
That's it. Yes, there's a lot of things happening in these weeks, these days. Every day something new happens. So stay tuned.
Yes, they know that.
I know, but stay tuned and have a lovely rest of your day, night, etc. And bye.